Yeah, then I in the back of my head saw it.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Maitland City Council meeting of August 23rd, 2021. If you all can take a moment to silence your phones if you have any. And this evening we don't have any to do our invocation, so if we just take a few moments of silence, center ourselves that way. Anybody who's willing and able, please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you. We have one presentation this evening. We have the employee's report. Conley in the room. Here we are. Brian, congratulations on being employee of the quarter. I would like to say a few words and afterwards a few words as well. I want to let everybody know who we have this quarter who's doing this honor. Brian Conley quickly made an impression since joining the City of Maitland as facilities maintenance trades worker in August of 2018. He came to the city with over 5 years of experience in the commercial electrical construction field and over 10 years experience in purchasing and delivery services. Brian is a passionate and enthusiastic employee, a loving father, and a devoted husband. Every day, Brian shows up to work with an optimism that he continues to spread throughout the day. He's the first to be called on to respond to critical facilities concerns and spends much of his day resolving issues that suddenly arise. Brian is focused on every aspect of his assigned duties and handles every task with the utmost attention. He is always willing to help out, no matter the situation, even going as far as driving out of his way to help another employee to get to work. He has stayed after hours on many occasions to help get projects completed. He is currently working on retrofitting our lights all around the city to LED and has recently installed new conduit and ran lines for the outside phone service at the police department substation. His knowledge in his field of work is valuable and a valuable asset, not just the public works departments, but to all the city of Maitland. Brian, would you like to say a couple of words, if you will?
Thank you very much, everybody. Working for Maitland is it's a very nice place to work. The co-workers that I have, that I work with, fellowship with, are very nice people. Most companies, when you go work for them, every place that I work, there's always somebody that you have to watch out for. That doesn't really exist at Maitland. It's very nice. When I meet new hires, I usually take care of giving them, getting their uniforms ordered for them. And I joke with them, because I tell them, well, you really don't have to worry about anybody, because I'm the meanest guy here. It's a little joke, help them to get acquainted, but it's also not that far from the truth. And I guess if I'd have to say what my ultimate goal here as far as working maintenance, one day I'd like to be the guy that figures out how to take VCRs and stop them from blinking. If I can do that, I can do anything. Thank you very much.
Okay, and we're lucky to have Brian, and people like the city, so congratulations again, Brian. First order of business is public hearings, of which there are none, so we'll go directly to old business and ask the Assistant City Manager if there's anything to report.
No, sir.
All right, we're moving right along to the consent agenda. For any member of council wish to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? If not, Okay, does anybody have any comments on consent item number 3? Any public comments? Anybody in the audience? Anybody? No. If there are none, we'll close the public comment period and motion is in order.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to the second. Maria, can you call the roll?
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Paul Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Mayor Lance.
Aye. Okay, now it is time for the public period. If any member of the public wishes to address any item that's actually not on the agenda, now is your time. Please approach the podium and have at it.
I guess I'm the one and only. Barry Calvinson, 500 North Liberty Avenue. I just wanted to come in and give a compliment to the police department. They're doing a fantastic job managing Fort Maitland Park, which was overdue. And they're doing a great job out there. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Here.
I've noticed that too. I'm driving by on the weekend. It's no longer the Wild West like it used to be. Anybody else from the public have any item at all they'd like to discuss? Okay, let's close the public period. The first decision is the ordinance relating to the Thurston House. Maria, would you read the title?
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, authorizing the City Council to lease certain properties owned by the City of Maitland to Coffee Works and Dreams LLC, a limited liability corporation organizing under the law of the state of Florida and capping out for workings and files, non-minors, and providing for an effective date.
Okay. Does any member of council have any, all right, so let's go first to Mark and introduce us and describe what we're doing here with the Thurston House ordinance.
All right, just in terms of background, back in 1989, the city purchased a property currently known as Thurston House, located at 851 Lake Avenue. And if any of you had the pleasure of going down there and seeing the house, it's a beautiful house. Wasn't always that way. Thanks to the Ballards, they've done a great job to make that what it's become. In October of '91, the city entered into a lease agreement with Joe Ballard Enterprise, which is Joe and Carol Ballard, who are here tonight, for a period of 10 years. The original lease currently envisioned significant improvements being made at the home by the Ballards, with them ultimately purchasing the home. As a requirement to purchase the home, since it's a voter approval was required because it's heritage land, so the voters had to approve referendum to sell anything that's designated heritage lands. In March 2000, the voters of Maitland voted against the sale of the home to the Ballards. So in September of 2001, we entered into a 12-year lease with the Ballards, and then in January of 2014, the lease was renewed for two additional 5-year terms. Recently, the Ballards approached us here at the city regarding their desire to retire and find a buyer for the B&B, the business, and the contents. They advised the city that they had found a suitable buyer who would like to take over the lease, but would desire a little more time. There's currently 2.5 years left on the remaining lease, the second year of the lease from 2014. City staff met with the buyers, reviewed the terms of the lease with them, gathered information for credit and background check, which all came back clean as a whistle. So what we've done is prepared a new lease with some minor adjustments to the 2014 lease, and those are enumerated in the staff report. They include a no pets clause. That was never an issue with the Ballards because they did allow guests to have pets, and they didn't have any pets. A security and advanced lease deposits, which we didn't include in there before, but since these are going to be new tenants, we thought that was a pretty standard clause in the lease. Requirements that the tenants remain on site when guests are present. And then we updated the rent amounts and shifted everything to allow for a new 5-year lease. So we're recommending that the council introduce the ordinance on first reading and set the public hearing date for September 13th, 2021. This is the first of 2 required readings. So if you have any questions of me or Carol and Joe are here. They have most experience with certainly the property, know it better than anybody. And Catalina Borquez and Boss Niemeyer are also here, who are our potential tenants. So if you have any questions for them, they would be happy to answer them also.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Does any member of council have any questions for Mark on this?
A couple. So what are our obligations as far as maintaining the property?
As far as the lease is concerned, basically we maintain the outside of the property, they maintain the inside of the property in those general terms. It's outlined in
Page 6.
page 6 of the lease agreement. Thank you, Michael.
So with like the HVAC system, is that theirs or ours?
That's ours.
It's our responsibility?
Yes.
And roof leaks would be ours. If the roof had to be replaced, that would be our responsibility.
Yes.
And what's the lease is $1,700 a month?
Yes. Change.
Good at least a half an hour for that much. Has there been any thought, how does this work? Could we like go to an open bid process or to see what someone else might offer for leasing that property, or how does that work? Can we not do that, or?
We're not required to go through an open bidding process with this.
Well, we could.
I'm not sure how we would structure that if we did. There are so many variables. I guess we could put it out there with this lease and hope to find a tenant, but the pool is for bed and breakfast owners is a little bit shallow.
What's our long term? Are we kind of break even on this, or if we added up all the cost we spent on maintaining it? Do we maintain the yards, the grounds? So that's 8 acres of grounds. Do we know how much that cost is?
We haven't broken down. I don't have those costs here tonight.
I think what we're probably doing is subsidizing a B&B. I mean, it's kind of can't miss if you're leasing it, because we basically take on all the major costs for $1,700 a month doesn't probably come close to covering what all we do and have into it. So I understand there's a problem with heritage lands, and that came about because I think the right decision back then was to sell it. And Homer Huff, the former mayor, kind of went on this big campaign that, giving away our land. I don't think it was adequately vetted or explained. I hate to be a bad guy, but if that's kind of the way we see this, that we think it's nice to have that place out there that really our residents don't use or really probably even see. Just to have it, and that's worth us subsidizing to keep it there. I don't know what other use the property could be used for. I think if you put it on another charter referendum and said, should we sell surplus property and use the money for our parks and rec, that would probably pass over the line. So I'm kind of up in the air. As a business proposition, this isn't a good business, but I know you don't always run government like a business. Those are my rambling thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Collins.
Mark, question, is that land out there, I don't know, what do you say, 6 acres, 8 acres? How big is the lot?
I don't have the acreage.
Okay, but whatever it is that, are we considering that parkland at all, or is that just?
It's heritage land, but we make.
So it doesn't
city
count to
owned-
our parks,
It's classified.
our park acreage?
I'd have to check the parking.
Okay. I just wondered, because I know we have, what is it, for every 1,000 people, we try to do an acre or whatever, so I didn't know if that was included to, you know, to that calculation.
But regardless, it would still be the same before or after the lease, or if we didn't lease it,
Right.
it still remains city-owned property.
Okay.
Anybody else any comments?
I think it's, I understand the cost issue from Mike, I don't know what from if we went down the cost, what has been the net effect of our maintenance responsibilities there? We know, Zach, I don't know if I heard the response.
But regardless of whether it's leased as a bed and breakfast or not, we're still going to maintain it. We have to maintain it. We can't let city property go into disrepair. So if we don't enter a lease, then we'll be maintaining and repairing inside and outside and maintaining grounds. If we execute the lease, we'll be just doing the external structure and grounds like we're doing right now, and the tenants will be occupying and maintaining the interior of the building.
I understand that, I just was to maybe alleviate Mike's fears if we knew that this was cost, because of the rent collected, it was cost neutral.
Well, it's going to vary, just like a homeowner, it varies year to year. You replace a roof, it's replaced for 30 years. You replace an AC, it's good for 10 years, and so it's intermittent. Sometimes it doesn't cost as much. Sometimes it can be expensive if a major repair is needed.
Is this what we want? We want the B&B there for forever? Do we want to reevaluate down there? Even if we approve this lease, do we want to reevaluate, you know, what we want to do with that property? Do we want to sell it? Do we want to convert it to a park? Do we want to leave it as B&B? I mean, it seems to me we're kind of doing this because we don't know what else to do.
Did you say an event center?
Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to be a bad guy. I just think those are questions that popped into mind as far as if Maitland was, I own 70% of stock in Maitland, and making decisions that way, or if we decided we wanted to go to referendum and sell the property to them and let them operate the B&B like the original plan was. I don't see why our value in owning it other than.
That's it. I just know one thing. I think that land has a value, and I personally wouldn't want to sell it. I think it has a value to the city, especially as, you know, we need space for things we can't even think about right now, that in 25, 30 years we might need, and, you know, the new owners have already, if they do well, and we always wish people well, that they do well and succeed, but at that time, you know, it's gone. But, you know, I mean, say these guys take it over and something happens and they don't really like doing what they do, and it opens back up after they decide not to renew it. I mean, we have that whole house for, back to what you were saying, to parks, for, you know, anything we want to do. I'm serious when I say, you know, an event center. I see other cities like Winter Garden has 4 different places. They have Little Hall, Tanner Hall, what do we call that right here? Jesse Brock, the community center. Then even Longwood has their community building, which is a house which they do weddings in, right? So, I mean, I don't, it doesn't really matter either way, because if they take it, they do good, that's good. But if they don't succeed, we can take it and make it into many things, have that opportunity. But I think we also save the land for future uses that we want to use for it, because back to the same thing we were talking about, Fort Maitland, we don't know what 25 years is going to bring.
Well, I want to first say thank you to the current owners of the business, and Joe and Carol have done wonderful things for the last several years. I think they bring a certain clientele to Maitland that it kind of goes unnoticed. I mean, because it is so far. I mean, they're in the corner, and people kind of come and go. But I think that they, it's reputationally a good thing for Maitland generally. It is going to be our land unless we, put out a referendum and sell the land. That would be a monumental lift. But short of that, I think that the current use for it is it's an unusual use. It's not something you see anywhere else. But I think it's drawn a certain like I said, a clientele that we wouldn't otherwise have, and the people who stay there love coming back time and again, and spend their time and money in Maitland, so that's great. And I think the process was, that Joe and Carol went out and tried to find somebody who would be a good fit to come in and take over and continue doing what they've been doing for years. And I think that they think they found the right fit. I think Mike, you brought up an interesting point. How would you put this out to RFP? I'm not sure what that RFP would look like, but this was, in some sense, kind of the way that we did that. The new prospective tenants bring new talents and skills that could really turn this place into an interesting place to come and continue to give Maitland a good name and for people to come throughout the year to see. The house itself is amazing. I would never want to lose that house for Maitland. And I'm glad that somebody's shown the interest to come and do this. So this is a two-step process. And usually, we would have a lease and it would be one and done here at Pace, but this is brought to us on an ordinance because it was so controversial the first time around, and I think just historically we brought it back as an ordinance, so we're going to have two whacks at this. So this is just the first reading, and if it passes tonight, then we'll have another chance to go at it. And I do have a couple of concerns about the lease that might be addressed in the next couple of weeks before it comes back. And one of those is just to kind of answer one of Mr. Thomas's concerns about, just to make sure that this is a business that's up and running and doing everything that I'm sure that you all want to do. One of the determination points is that you fail to operate as a bed and breakfast for 60 continuous days. There might be some way to kind of get more specific about that, what that would look like. And I think that it's not the typical job of a city manager or assistant city manager to go out and check on a business to see how they're doing, but I think that that's what we do. So this could be an exciting new addition to Maitland, and again, I thank Joe and Carol for all the work, hard work, and sweat equity they put into this. So if there's no further discussion, the motion will be over.
Do we want to open?
Oh, wait, yeah, public, yes. We should open to the public. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say to address this issue? Please come forward. So have your 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm Dale McDonald, 108 Angela Court, and again, the second meeting in a row, Maria, please take note. I'd like to agree with Councilmember Thomas, just as I had the opportunity to agree with former Mayor Schieferdecker recently. So, things you don't normally expect to see from us here. But yes, I'm not a big fan of the taxpayers of the city of Maitland subsidizing a business. I was only peripherally around when Mayor Huff, in his great sentimentality, decided that this was what this needed to be back in the day. I have no real interest in seeing us, certainly at the moment, trying to sell the property, but that's taken care of by the heritage land classification or designation, and the referendum that would be part of that if you wanted to sell the property. But I don't know that we've ever begun to sit down seriously and thought about what could that 6 or 8 acres be? What we've known for the last, was it 89? So for the last 30 years, essentially it's been a bed and breakfast. The city of Maitland, most citizens don't even know it's there. Is it a beautiful spot? Absolutely. You know, so, and we did a great project with it in water purification and cleaning up of Lake Eulalia some time ago with a demonstration project, pumping water from the lake up to the top and letting it filter through various pools and pour back into the ground. So it's been a fabulous project from that standpoint. But I'm not sure that we've ever given it a good shot at seeing what it could be if not for, it's not a historically or architecturally significant house. It's just another old house that Ballards have done a great job of maintaining the inside. We have been responsible for maintaining the 4 primary points, HVAC, roof, paint, all those things over the years. And again, I tend to want to look at the city of Maitland as a business that's in the business of providing services to the citizenry. And what's been our return on investment? $1,700 for 8 acres in Maitland. Pretty good deal. All right, thank you.
Barry Tomlinson, 500 North Maitland Avenue. I can't believe I'm up here twice in one night. I haven't been here in probably 2 years. But anyway, I didn't have any idea this was on the agenda tonight. But I've heard it and I listened to all of you. I listened to all of the thoughts and I thought there's other options. One is you can require the tenant to take care of this building instead of using the taxpayers' money. And if you're to do that, it's a much better deal for all of us. That's another option. You can negotiate into this instead of, I just heard $1,700 for 8 acres in Maitland. Who wouldn't take that deal? But at the same time, solve the problem. Give them a counteroffer that works for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Yes.
Carol Ballard, 851 Lake Avenue, Thurston House. First of all, I want to say it was a pleasure and an honor for us to renovate the building that was sat empty for 2 years and no one had any idea what to do with it. It was our honor to do that. We have maintained the building beautifully. We've been open for 30 years. We've had people from all over the world come and stay with us. And we only have 1.152 acres that we lease. The city maintains a park around us right now. There's walking paths. Neighbors know about it. We do not lease the whole 8 acres, only 1.152 acre. And we do walls in, everything, walls in, just like a condo. The city takes care of the roof, which they replaced a few years ago. It's a 40-year roof. They already replaced the AC units. They should be fine like forever because they replaced them again just a few years ago. We work very carefully and very thoughtfully with Public Works, which Jason isn't here anymore, but worked very carefully with him over the years, getting things done that were the city's responsibility. If we were to leave, the city would have a big old open empty house. We own the business. We own all the contents. We own everything to do with Thurston House. The city has no right to any of that. We feel that we have found us 30 years ago in Catalina and Bas. They have an amazing background. He has hospitality degrees. She's worked with a Seminole School County for 10 years off-site. They are so enthusiastic and they're just wonderful. They are going to do wonderful things going forward with your beautiful property. And, it's just, again, we've always been the highest and best use. We've gone through so many meetings. We've gone through 10 months of planning and zoning in the beginning. Every time it came back to highest and best use is a bed and breakfast. Nobody could ever figure out anything else to do. Nobody else would put money into the building like we did in the beginning, not knowing what would happen. Everybody had ideas, but then when it got down to it, to come up with a plan and put some money in it, it was just us. So, we're very obviously passionate about this, and we feel this is the best thing for Maitland. I mean, that doesn't mean down the road the city couldn't do something different. We did try to purchase it. It didn't pass, but you know, Homer made that happen, so there's not much we can do about that now. But again, highest and best use is bed and breakfast. So, thank you.
Thank you, Carol. I think it gives us some good perspective on where we've been. Raise any further questions anybody's mind or any more discussion?
Before you close it out, I just was going to say, and I don't know how this comes back, but Mark, I did find, I talked to Mark earlier, there were a couple of things, I don't know that I need to point them out here, but there's just some things in the actual lease. There's reference to some things that I don't think exist, and there's some inconsistencies, so just, I can direct those to Mark, but I don't know if I need to have stated those on the record for me to, I don't think I need to itemize them.
Yeah, I think that since this is a two-step deal, going to an ordinance, I think we have time for
Yeah,
it back.
well, just for the record, I was just going to say I was going to talk to Mark about that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. All right, let's close the public hearing then. And motion being ordered.
Let me ask this question, because one of the points was about sort of uncertainty, and there was discussion, I think, Mark, wasn't there talk about the need for extensions? Because I think one of this is just that this locks it up for, yeah, no, it's 5 years with 2 5-year options, I believe, right? Right or wrong?
I think that's,
Right.
What is the option on the city or the?
Options on the tenant, am I right?
I believe that option's on the city.
Let me look, hold on. No, I believe under paragraph 6, the tenant shall have the option to renew for one additional 5, so it's 1 year term.
The total, I'm sorry, Mike, the total of 10, Mike, the total of 10 years?
Yeah, so it's 10, it's 2 terms of 5 years.
Is there an escalator in the lease?
Yes.
And it goes up, what is it, by CPI, as an index, which I think the index is, and it's after the first year it goes up, I think that's on page 2 of the lease, right?
By CPI.
So it's 2 options. I mean, it sounds to me like we don't have any immediate idea of what we want to do with that property. So at a minimum, we're talking about, I can't imagine just through a process that we would get there within 5 years. And I think, the option is with the tenant, so I don't know if that's helps with this discussion or not, but or maybe it makes it work, I don't know. But it is a 10-year period in which we're locking it up.
You guys are lawyers, is there, can you make it the option of the leaser and the leasee, or is that?
You could have the tenant request the option. It'd be on their choice whether or not they want to continue. But then essentially you could say that they could give you notice, and if you don't like it, you could say no to the extension. It would obviously be on them. If they don't, if for whatever reason they don't want to carry on, we can't force them to exercise an option. But
Right.
if we want the ability to get it back after 5 years, but I also don't know, depending on how much money the tenant is going to invest, they may need 10 years to recoup their costs, which is sort of the incentive of having a longer term. You want to incentivize someone to, like the previous owners did, they invested in it and they wanted to know that they could get their investment back out. So it is it goes both ways.
Well, that would be the time for a motion if we want to pass this on to a second reading.
I mean, look, I don't want this to go away because in some sense that they've done the work. But I do think there are some things that seem to be, there's some questions that I think are out there that would be helpful to the decision. So.
Well, I think if you just, and I think it's probably true, but at this point, we're not making a decision on whether or not we're going to tie ourselves up right now. All we're really asking is we want to consider this at a future meeting. And if we don't, then it's done. And we're better come up with a new process or something else to do with the property quickly.
Well, and I think that's part of what I'm thinking, is that I don't know that we have an immediate need. So it sounds to me like there's a time period in which this makes sense. I just don't know if going beyond. I don't know.
Is there an immediate need?
Well, the ballards are done. They're leaving at the end of the month.
No, I'm saying the immediate need of the city.
No, we don't have any immediate needs for
Right,
the use of this property. We've gone around and around with this since Carol and Joe told us that they were going to be leaving. We've had several meetings with senior staff to figure out what potential uses there could be, and we have no need for an old house right now.
Right. And in context, however, the deal between the Ballards and the respective new tenants is in the balance otherwise. It's not just one person taking on a lease for another. They really have to sell all the interior items in the house to the successor tenants or not.
So this is just to push it off. I'll go ahead and make a motion, just so we can, I mean, listen. Everybody on this side is all lawyers, so I think we'll have some discussion with Mark to look over contracts, which give. We're looking for the 13th.
Yep.
Before you make the motion, is there anything that you would want to see discussed in the September 13th? Is there anything in preparation for the September 13th meeting you want to have more information on that you can direct staff in your motion? Just run it out.
I think one of the crazy complications about this is the term of the lease begins before we've actually been able to fully ratify what we're doing with it. So I realize that's a timing situation that is not by our making, but it's forcing a decision without really enough time to be able to make these changes adequately, because really the lease begins in a week. So if we had changes that we want to make, we have to do it with enough reasonable time to be able to pivot if there's any issues.
Andrew, you see any issues there?
So I think unless it's been terminated, I don't know the status of the existing lease. The existing lease
Still goes for another 2.5
and
years.
it's still active.
Mhm.
Is that correct? And
Yes.
so that would require some action to terminate, and this lease essentially replaces that. It's predated. So either the date can be adjusted, which is not a problem, or it can remain the same. And I don't know what the plan is for that existing lease termination, or if there's language in here. I'm familiar with the 2014 lease a little more. I've looked at it in several years. So I'm not sure if that's a part of this one, but it's something that could be addressed, via that way too. But because you have an existing lease that's already out there, I don't see a problem as far as the dates.
When does that lease, the 2014 lease, when does that actually terminate? Is that
You were saying 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
2.5 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
There was no option to extend that lease at the end of it.
Well, the tenants are not interested in extending it. They think we had one.
I mean, in the current lease agreement, is there an option for the tenant to extend it, or is that the end of the extension?
That would be, I believe that would have to be renegotiated.
I mean, the current terms, does it say this it's already been extended, now it ends, or if they wanted to, the current tenants wanted to stay, do they have an option to extend it under the current lease? Does that make sense?
But I think for.
So they're getting an option to extend it 5 years. Is there an option in the current lease to extend it 5 years, or?
I think the answer is no, right?
Oh, okay.
I think it expires at the end of 2023.
So everything
as
is,
written.
there's no more, okay, gotcha.
Well, otherwise, if we're, well, maybe this is overly complicated, but the lease
Yeah.
could be assigned.
Yeah.
From Ballards to the new tenants, and that would just give them the remaining 2.5 years. Of course, the question again goes to what Mike was saying, that are they going to invest all that money in, buying all those interior furnishings for a 2.5 year security period? Probably not.
And the city council would have to approve that assignment.
Yes, that would. So I think the cleaner thing to do is, I think what's happening is that the current lease is, the tenants have asked that it be terminated for reasons beyond their control. And this is, that happening, there's now a time to bring in an entirely new staff that would, that would include the business deal of purchasing all these goods in the house, and that only makes sense if you do it on a 5-year lease. That makes sense if you do it on a 2.5 year.
So really, we're kind of being thrown with all this at one time, saying, all right, listen, we're out of town here in a couple of weeks. We want to transfer this over. This is going to be the new rules and everything. And I mean, we're sitting up here and we have questions about the lease, and it's kind of goes to climate. I mean.
All right. So what we could do is, and again, I think this is for reasons beyond the Ballard's control, but they, what they've asked is for it to be done, for them to be released from this lease essentially by the end of this month, which is almost in a week. And so clearly the commencement of this term, September 1st, by the time we actually address it and execute it, would be, it would be a post-dated item. But I think if anyone wants to make either the motion on the first go around or to amend the motion to hold off the commencement date of the term, it's not convenient certainly for the Ballards or for the new tenants, but it's something that's reasonable if we're not feeling like we're educated enough to make this decision right now.
Well, I mean, to be fair, John, I think for the new tenants, I wouldn't to make them subject to a lease that they're not even sure what it's going to say yet. So, I think for fairness, we should definitely have the effective date. And essentially, I think the motion really is, you're on, John, is that this is a motion to early terminate the existing lease effective of a date certain, and then have this new lease be effective as of the next business day or the next day, whatever it is, so that there's a seamless turnover of the two. And so I think that what we're talking about is basically just looking to extend that date beyond what is required or requested at September 1st. That's what I'm.
When was it going to come back?
September 13th.
September 13th.
So we would have until 13th to decide whether or not this is something we wanted to do. Again, this is a two-step process. It's an ordinance, it's not just a simple lease document.
Are we really ruminating over a lease, or are we ruminating over the future use of the property at this point?
I think for me, use would be more salient question. The lease is not.
Right.
This isn't moving the needle. The discussion about lease use. And there seems to be, I don't hear a consensus on that based on what I've heard.
Yeah, well, it may be, just, and I don't know how much background everybody has on this, but, I've been talking to Sharon about it for some time. Sharon's not here with us tonight, so she can't speak to it. I'm sure Mark knows this better than Sharon knows, but I think Sharon was the one that was out there kind of working with the Ballards initially, and the new tenants and vetting the new tenants and getting everything done. I mean, my understanding of how this all happens is, as Barry and our former mayor has said, it's it's a question of what the use is, and you know, the highest and best use of the property. I think Carol gave us a good background of what the history of that was, which was, we've seen this movie before. I mean, we can sit around and talk about what would be the best, highest and best use. Nobody's come up with a better idea yet. I mean, we could raise the house and have an 8-acre park over there that is largely inaccessible, except for people coming up to look out in there. As Sharon and I talked about, you can make it the new public works or the new parks and rec, offices, headquarters, whoever, move some kind of city department over there and we can use the house for that purpose. And, I'm not sure that's any better use of the property. I mean, you're not drawing any new business to Maitland, you're not showing off Maitland, you're just having governmental use of the property. And you have a functioning residential home. And either you want to keep that functioning residential home, or you want to tear it down and make park space, or you want to put other governmental users in there. I don't think there is a fourth option. I haven't heard anybody come up with it.
I've said it, I really do. I think it's going to be a great place for special events. I mean, you have a beautiful house on the lake, and I see it all the time, and, in what I do. I mean, there's the home in Lake Mary that's, people use for the wedding. There's, I mean, that's even I know it's not part of Winter Park, but the University Club. There's Tanner Hall and Winter Garden. I mean, there's a lot of places that if you rented it out, you could rent it out for, $300-400 an hour for, 8 hours, 16 hours, guaranteed pretty much every weekend. And then you could also rent it out at half cost during the week to residents. I mean, there's potential out there for everything. I mean,
Just so you're aware, there's only 2, maybe 3 parking spaces there. So if we're going to convert it, there'd be a process, a zoning process to go through and a site plan process to go through. Then you're putting a commercial use, an event center, on what is Lake Eulalia, a residential lake. So this is not a snap of the fingers thing. This is
right.
This is something to be far more involved than that. There'd be design issues, engineering issues. You have to do stormwater. You have to do everything for a commercial site.
I think Mark was excited about operating events in there.
Well,
I'm sensitive.
to your point, Vance, and I haven't talked to Bass and Catalina, who are the prospective new tenants. Joe and Carol have done a wonderful job of bringing people into Maitland, and it's run as a bed and breakfast. People come and they have a great stay, and they have a great breakfast, and they learn a little bit about Maitland and have a good discussion. I think that, as I understand it from Bass and Catalina, that Bass is a chef of some regard and renown, perhaps, and I think that they are looking to do things that perhaps are not as traditional in a bed and breakfast and having classes. I mean, because have you been out? Have you seen the first? I mean,
I've been out there a few times.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place with a kitchen, and I think you could cooking classes out there, or you could do what have you. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I see them nodding and that type of thing. So I understood this from Sharon, that that's the kind of thing they have going on, or thinking about doing this as a young couple starting off with hospitality background. I don't see any reason why you couldn't use some of that property for small events. I don't know, bachelorette party. I don't know what you would do. I mean, for people to come and stay, and for destination weddings, that kind of thing.
Well, I'll second Vance's motion just to move this along
I think we have to have the motion first.
I thought you made a
Did you
motion.
make it?
I didn't really make it all.
No.
It wasn't very sound, but.
I withdraw my second.
The point was to get me to shut up and work, so yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get it right.
So, let's just go ahead and bring this and just, buy a little time and see what it looks like down the road, because we're just kicking it back and forth right now. So, I would make the motion that we do introduce the ordinance on first reading and set the public hearing date for September 13th, 2021.
So if I second this, the concerns that Mike has raised and you have raised as far as the things of the lease. Some of the issues I would be concerned with is somehow to limit the city's liability for expenses at the site. So I don't know if that all can be baked into when we bring this back.
If you second it, I'll try to give you some amendments here.
Friendly amendment, all right.
Okay, I'll second it, pending Mr. Wild's.
Right, so from what I can tell, the lease is for 1.152 acres based on what's attached, right? The larger area around it is the 6 point something, which is the one that actually borders the lake. So I think one of the things we're talking about is just overall maintenance. I think again, when it comes to the use of the property, so if I were to, from questions to staff, or I think, Mike, I heard questions from you on what were the overall costs of maintenance responsibilities of the building. Clearly, the grounds around it, outside the 1.152, are not subject to this lease, so they're with us no matter what. And obviously, what we could do with that 6 balance remains with us. I think that one of the questions would be the length of the term and whether or not 5 acre, 5 years, plus another 5-year option is what works for us and also works for the future tenant. I think we would want to make sure that we're backing up the effective date to probably October 1st to give everybody the correct amount of time after a September 13th meeting to act appropriately. So those are the, I don't know if anyone else has. But again, I think that this has probably been vetted through somewhat, and so I think from a short term, we may have answered some of these questions. I think some of the things we're talking about today are more long term, whether or not that long term is covered by this 10 years, or if within that 10 years we're thinking the city might want to do something different. I think that's.
Is it 10 years or is it 12 and a half years?
No, it's 10 years. So effectively, old lease goes away.
Oh, that's right, thank you.
And so it's 2 5-year options under this, 2 5-year periods. Under this one, it's September 1 to what would be August 31 of 2031 versus now it's going to be October, so just back those days up.
So to make that,
I mean, realistically, are we going to do something within that property within the first 5 years? I think that's one question. Are we realistically going to do something within that property within that next 5 years, realistically? And then kind of, so that's sort of tying up the property and its use, which I think was to Lindsay's point. What is the use that we're looking at? And then specifics of the lease, those are kind of, again, I don't think they're the ones totally driving this conversation, but cost of maintenance, use of the overall property, which I think sounds to me like that's really not, we still have that 6 acres to do what we would want at any time. So.
I also, and this, although we do have precedent for this in other contracts that we have with people affiliated with the city, maybe perhaps we ask the new proprietors to come and make a report to council on a semi-regular basis to give us some sort of scope of the value that they are delivering to the property and to the residents of Maitland by maintaining this property. Just kind of let us know what they're doing with it. You know, what have you done? How many people are showing up? What are, you know, because I don't have any idea on the specifics, and it would be nice to hear what they're doing, especially if there is ongoing events that they are planning, or if they're finding ways to incorporate the residents.
so same thing we would ask of the library and.
Exactly, right. Maybe quarterly or once every 6 months or.
I don't understand, you know, it's operated as a B&B, I don't know what that means. I mean, if you like fill out all the forms and the government paperwork, but you never have anybody actually walk through the door, is that operating as a B&B?
Well, but this would go directly to that 60-day clause of operational. I mean, it'd give us a better clue of if things are going in one direction or not.
Otherwise, you could have basically rent this nice mansion in Maitland for $1,700 a month and have the city do the yard work for you and never have anybody check in. So I don't think they're going to do that, but I'm just saying, technically, I'm wondering if that is a possibility. It's just kind of an interesting thing to know.
So from a global level, I'd say that what the two things that we're kind of dealing with are, one, long-term use of the property and what we would like to see it used for, and then two, big picture is overall kind of terms of the lease and whether or not the rent and maintenance responsibilities are proper terms.
So it doesn't really seem like that's an amendment, we're just kind of giving a view of where we need to go next meeting.
I think
give
we're
staff
asking-
direction.
We're asking some questions to then hopefully have a more informed discussion on September 13th.
Mhm.
All right, any more discussion? Okay, Maria, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Paul Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Mayor Lambert.
Aye. Okay. That was supposed to be the easy one. Okay, well, thanks, I guess we got some work to do on that, let's move on to the next item. It is the reduction in zoning citation, and methods, can you introduce the item for us?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I hope this is the easy one of the evening. And I promise you can be done in one vote tonight. All right, so a little background of this case. On November 23rd of 2020, the city received a complaint about overgrown vegetation and a very unkept pool located at 1012 Kiwani Trail. The owner, according to Orange County Property Appraiser at the time, was Brenna Wiggins. And during the site visit from the code enforcement officer, it was discovered that there was potentially some work done that was done without permits. So an informational letter was sent to the property owner regarding the complaints, and they were provided a couple weeks to contact us back to work out how to get them in compliance. And after receiving no response from the property owner, a notice of violation was sent on January 11th, 2011, with a compliance date of January 25th to bring those into compliance. Following the deadline, a notice of hearing was sent and posted on the property, and it was sent to an April 7th, 2021 code enforcement meeting. At that time, the special magistrate found it in violation of the stagnant water, the excessive growth, and that there was work done without permit. So the special magistrate ordered that the case be brought into compliance, the house be brought into compliance by May 7th, 2021. It was brought back to a code enforcement hearing on July 7th, 2021 with no compliance at all. So the special magistrate at that point ordered a fine of $250 a day starting from the date of compliance, which was that May 8th date. Tonight's applicant, Mr. Ori Sabin of Safety Net Group, is currently under contract to purchase the house. He actually is scheduled to close tomorrow. He's in the audience tonight. We'll be happy to answer any questions as well if you have any. So Mr. Sabin appeared before the special magistrate on August 4th of 2021 to request a stay of the fine accumulation. At that point, the fine was $30,000. So the special magistrate at that hearing granted a stay and gave Mr. Sabin 90 days to remedy all the violations, but also in his order said that if the violations, if the sale did not go through or the violations were not cured within that 90 days, then the fines would continue to accumulate. So tonight, Mr. Sabin is requesting council reduce the fine to 20%, which would be $6,000. Staff is in support of that request, as our primary goal is to get the house into compliance first, and then secondly, to recoup the cost, the administrative costs of taking this case on, prosecuting it to the magistrate and all that stuff. So staff is in support of that. Again, Mr. Sabin is here in the audience, and we'll be happy to answer any questions, as am I. And that's...
Dan, when is the timing for commitment to bring this into compliance?
It's 90 days from that August 4th date.
So we would be at
November 4th?
November 4th.
Correct. Most of the, two of the violations, one of them was just overgrown vegetation, so that's mainly just cutting the grass, maintaining it. The pool, having a pool company come out there and clean it up. The work without a permit, the applicant tonight's applicant here in the audience is committed to applying for the permit as soon as he takes ownership of the property, which presumably will be tomorrow.
So the applicant or the new owner can get all this done. I mean, obviously the pool stuff, it should be an easy one, but the permit issue, they can clear up within 90 days.
Absolutely.
Anything else? For Dan,
It's already selling price by 24,000. We're kind of subsidizing the seller who's going to our rules. But
So, listen, and I have some reservation about this, but I think, what code enforcement always shoots for is not to, and tell me if I'm wrong, is not to come down with the hammer and penalize, but more to get the homeowners to do what's right and fix it, really not to, come down on them and, to be the big bad city. But at the same time, I have some reservation that it sends a message that we're a little bit soft,
Well, I'll ask the lawyer. So if we did this and I was out of code compliance and and our staff apparently bent over backwards to try to get this guy to comply. So if I'm an irresponsible owner and I let my property and just let it fester and accrue all the fines and then just sell it and get out from under all the penalties, is that precedent? Although I understand the desire to get it cleaned up, but I'm just kind of wondering is that what we're doing in a way? We're just letting somebody have bad behavior and then avoid the fines by selling it, and then in the future, what precedent are we setting?
Yeah, I mean, John, I talked to Dan about, it's not uncommon to appeal a code enforcement ruling, try to get the fines reduced. That's not an uncommon. I got to do a couple of them. I think it's one that it's a rite of passage for real estate lawyers.
Okay, well, I'll defer to your guys.
But the one thing I did talk to Dan about was I think what we're trying to do here is incentivize bringing this into compliance. And I did say to Dan that if we were to delay this for 90 days, so November 4th, to me, we shouldn't be starting the fines over again. We should reinstate the larger fine amount. And then it would grow from there, not growing from 0 and 250. So what we're really doing here is incentivizing compliance. We should keep our tool for incentivizing. And clearly the tool is a fairly large penalty at this point. So
Dan, you said this is closing tomorrow?
It is closing tomorrow. It's actually scheduled to close today, but because of the wanting to find out how much the lien is going to be on the property, they were able to push it to tomorrow. And one thing that might add a little bit of context is the property owner, Brenna Wiggins, who was out of compliance for so long, from what I understand, she's been very ill, and that's why she's been unresponsive and everything like that. And now we have Mr. Saban that wants to come take it off her hands and try to bring it into compliance. And in doing that, there's a $30,000 lien on the property right now. So the request is to reduce it down to 20%, which covers it.
So in anticipation of tomorrow's closing, are we releasing the lien so they can close, or are they closing subject to it, or what's happening there?
The lien would be reduced down to $6,000.
And they'd be paying it tomorrow as part of the closing?
Yeah, they would be paying the fine, yes.
Okay, so then after tomorrow, when they become the owners, the lien is closed. So any continuing violations on the property would be new against them as city owners if they're not remedied within the 90 days.
Yes, I believe the order from the magistrate was that it starts accumulating again after 90 days. I don't
Right, so then that would put them in some sort of initiative to get themselves into compliance, because as the new owners, they start the clock all over again if they haven't finished their renovations.
They start from zero instead of 24,000.
Right, but and we're also staying 250. I mean, essentially, we're giving them all 250 a day. We're giving them a free period, if you will.
So what was the construction that they're compliance on?
It was a second-story window that they created a balcony and turned it into doors to make like an outdoor thing that was all done without permits.
And that's when Ms. Wiggins owned it, correct?
Correct.
So, I mean, that was kind of known. I mean, that was on purpose.
I
mean, you know that. You know you got to go get
Right.
permits for that. I can understand the grass and the pool, but that's kind of where I have a problem right there.
But anyway,
And then it's kind of I'll just do it, and if I get caught, then I'll ask for forgiveness, right? So.
And we feel that the $6,000, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that not only takes care of your actual costs for everything you've done, but has the city actually gone out and done any remediation on the pool or anything else? Does that also lump that into?
And we have done nothing. What it does is it covers the cost of all of the staff time that's gone into this, the special magistrate time that has gone into this, the filing, the lien.
Okay. And that seems totally reasonable to me, and I'm willing to make the motion.
I'll second that.
So the lien is being satisfied, but the case has stayed open, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Am I, is that?
With 90 days.
So essentially what would happen here, you have a new owner, is we close everything out, and then from there, once the new property owner comes into possession, you have to start due process, actions for any type of a violation all over again. So that would be, I don't know if this was a recurring violation when Mr. Manzanares made his order, but you go through first violation, that notice.
Yeah, see, that was
notice
my
for
concern. I mean, that's sort of we're trying to get this, I don't want to have to go through the same process.
The way Mr. Manzanares explained it was that basically the new property owner would just be assuming the existing code violation and taking it on from there.
Did Mr. Saban get any kind of, did Mr. Saban and Ms. Wiggins work out do we know, did they work out any kind of mutual understanding and reduction of cost due to the violation?
You can ask Mr. Saban that, I don't know.
I mean, that wasn't,
We don't want to do that.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
no, okay, sorry, I don't have a question.
It's not for us to.
It sounds like, going forward, if this closes and Mr. Saban is the new owner, we know that balcony is unpermitted, and then if it's not dealt with pretty quickly, we'll be back up to 250 a day violations, and then he'll own that. He did, I think what we're saying, he really didn't own the things that happened yesterday, except the $6,000.
Right. When he buys it tomorrow, technically, there are code violations on the property immediately, but the magistrate is giving 90 days for those to be remedied.
Yeah, so that's I think the clarity I was trying to seek there. Council is it. It's one thing to get rid of the lien and the current penalty and say we're reducing this from 30 to 6. It's another thing to say that the case is kind of dismissed and we have to start the clock all over again. That's what I'm trying to clarify.
you're saying the case is still open?
If the case is still open, because I believe also in order to, Andrew, correct me, I mean, I think you have to keep it so you can not start at 250 at 0 in order to keep it at the 24, the balance left plus the 250 after that. I think you have to keep the current case open, because I'd have to find that, I think you have to go to the magistrate and have them establish, if you're not going off of the current scheme.
You have an existing violation, so, the violation has not been remedied. You're essentially proving and letting the lien go away, the violation still exists, so you're still prosecuting the same violation, just under a different owner.
But we'd be starting.
So you'd be starting the process over, but since the violation already exists, you'd be going back and, the fines can be postdated to continue to accrue from, tomorrow on.
It has to be a new case or it's a new owner.
That's what I was going to say. So he
And so you have to have a new ordinance, a new report come out saying that they are in violation of,
But you'd have to start the code enforcement process
you have to
over
start,
again
right,
tomorrow.
and, well, because the statute requires that they have to start
That's what I'm
over.
saying. I think we're tripped on this, that essentially we're giving up, we'd have to start all over again.
Yes.
So you're months out. I mean, if we're giving them 3 months, then you have to start the process in 3 months. So you're however many months after that before you really are.
It's a requirement under 162 that you put that.
Yeah.
My general thought is he's not gonna buy this property to.
Yeah. I'm more worried about the like you said, the one that sort of seems intentional, the grass and the pool. I understand.
I think if he's gonna spend the kind of money he's probably spending to buy the house, we can assume
All right.
he's gonna.
So motion to approve the pending property owner's request to reduce the fine ordered by the special magistrate on July 8, 2021 for the property located at 10 and 12 Gorham Trail to 20% of the current accrued fine amount to cover the administrative costs.
Second.
But before we get there, can we open it up for the public areas? Anybody has any comment on this item, please? Come to the podium and leave your public comment.
Can't resist.
Yeah, I used to chair, Dale McDowell, 108 Tangelo. I used to chair the code enforcement board here when it used to exist. But this is not unusual to have $250 a day fines amount to a lot of money. And folks do appeal to city council, and I think that Vance is right. That the intent is not to punitively punish people, it's to bring out property into compliance. And these folks would be less than smart fellows that I know that they are, not to bring it into compliance like yesterday, because the city's favorite volunteer code enforcement person will be calling in and reporting it like Thursday. So I think this is a fair resolution. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any comments at all on this? Seeing none, let's close the public period and go back to Councilperson Paul Harrison. I think we'll make a motion.
Right.
Okay, we got a motion and a second.
Yeah.
That doesn't the vote.
Consider it made.
Consider it done. And now be the time for the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Weil.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Paul Harrison.
Aye.
Mayor Miles.
Aye. Okay. All right. Nobody asked the obvious questions. All these Florida fans up here, I have to ask how that's closed. Mr. Saban, is there any relation?
No.
No.
Oh, all right. I didn't want to find that out.
I thought the same thing. I was like,
Depends what relations you're asking.
I would have killed that motion in a heartbeat.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item is the resolution on our stormwater rates for setting the stormwater fees for FY22. Maria, would you call the read the title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maitland, Florida, establishing an ERU rate to be charged for environmental stormwater utility fees and providing for an effective date.
Okay. Mark, would you introduce the item?
Sure. On August 2nd of this year, the city held a 2022 Stormwater Fund Budget Workshop. As the budget was presented, the Stormwater Fund budget draft assumed the $9.80 per equivalent residential unit charge, which is unchanged from the rate set in October of 2020 for fiscal year 2021, current fiscal year. It's anticipated that this rate will generate approximately $1.4 million in stormwater fee revenue in 2022. Currently, the administrative costs for this fund are capped at $90,000 by the City Council. In other enterprise funds, we charge full administrative costs across the board. These are capped at $90,000. At the budget workshop, the City Council requested that analysis be completed to determine the impact to the fund if all administrative support costs were allocated to the Stormwater Fund. To address that, two tables were attached in your agenda packet. The first showing the current impact on the fund, maintaining the cap for administrative expenses at $90,000. Second, showing the full impact of the administrative expenses, which is a difference of $163,000. So it's a significant impact on the fund. Like I said, the 22 budget's based upon the 9.6 ERU rate. Based upon that current rate, we'll be running a deficit in 2026. So if we're going to alleviate that deficit while maintaining the $90,000 cap on the administrative expenses, that would require an increase in the rate to $10.99 per ERU. When you take a look at the full administrative table, if we're going, can you see it runs a deficit in 2025? If we're going to eliminate that deficit and recoup that $253,000 in administrative costs, which would go to the general fund, that would be a rate of $12.14 per ERU. So just food for thought there. Like I said, we base the current year's budget on the $9.80 per ERU. So we'd be looking for direction on where you'd like to go with the rate for this year.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Anybody have any questions for Mark? Any questions at all?
Hey, Mark, can you give a little history of why did we put a cap of 95,000 on the administration fee? What was that?
The philosophy, I don't recall when it was before I got here, but the philosophy was it was a new fund, and we wanted to have the costs go to the people and the projects to support the fund, to help with the stormwater and lakes. So if you charge the entire administrative cost to it, that was just taking money away from those operational staff costs and project costs that could go to help our stormwater and lake system. So philosophically, that's why that was capped. Why is it 90,000? I can't answer that question.
And that money all goes, I mean, Kim's, some of it comes out for Kim's payroll, for secretaries, for whoever has
It's
to
all
help out.
administrative
And
support,
there's,
IT,
Right.
finance, personnel, it's all those costs that we all need to run every department. Those have been deferred and capped at $90,000. And there's percentages of each department that we worked out based upon how those are used, so it's a formula we use.
and coming in the next year, you said it would, I think in our discussion, it was going to be $200,000 for?
Yeah, $253,000 is the total administrative cost if we charge all the administrative costs to the fund.
That's a big difference.
Sure is.
And I think that last year we sort of talked about this and sort of generally doing some increases, not all at once. Clearly, I think raising it that big number maybe would be a big leap in 1 year. I am concerned just because we're really taking money out of the general fund to pay for things in this bucket, and we looked at the budgets out for the general fund and years out, and that was showing a negative. So we kind of have to come to terms with all of these things showing negatives at years out. So I think there's just a recognition that that is the reality. So, and whether or not we play games with that $90,000 number, to me is sort of irrelevant, because whatever we don't pay out of this fund gets paid out of from the general fund, from that 90,000, versus we could raise the number here and try to pay for some of those costs. And it's just like I said, it seems to me like it's coming out of, it's all coming out of the taxpayers, and then it's seemingly being captured by another pot.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we started out, well, this is for 22. In 2017, we were at $10.39, and then we started halfway going backwards on how much. And I think last year we were brave enough to bring it up a whole 10 cents.
20, right?
No, 10.
I thought it was 960 to 980.
What did we bring it up?
this chart shows 960 to 980. I mean,
960 to 920
Oh,
cents.
oh, do we go 20 cents? I'm sorry, my bad, 20 cents. So, I think I was looking at it, if we just brought it up to what it was in 2017, that generated $68,400 extra dollars. So I kind of agree. I mean, sometimes you just got to take the bandage off. You got to rip the bandage off and say, listen, this is what we need. This is what, to get us going forward and to make sure we have everything we need. This is going to be the cost to do business. And I think, Mark was saying at 1099 ERU, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a fan, I'm not a fan of, but I think we have to be realistic and, say we've nickel and dimed it for 5 years now, and we just can't nickel and dime it going forward. I mean, if we're just keeping up with the minimum, we're never really going to get where we need to be.
I'll back out or whatever rate you guys want to set, 'cause I'm going to be gone in March. But as far as nickel and diming, what we did was stop taking money from residents and sticking it in the bank at 0.1% interest. We didn't have the capacity to spend the money, so there wasn't much use to collect it. So, if we have the ability to do great projects and we can get them up and running, then, but as far as the billing, I think I'm a big believer in transparency, so I think we should charge what things cost.
So, listen, I'm with you, and that's where I think, we're really making the difference, because if we look at what our stormwater and lakes, how many people we've had, I mean, we've gone through, 4 managers in 5 years, and that's because we've made the job just almost, it's a no-win job, because you couldn't do all the work. Finally, we have Kim now. Kim's seen that, and she wants to bring on more staff, and in fact, this would include 2 new personnel to help out. Before, the problem was we couldn't do projects because we didn't have enough staff, right? And the staff we had was just trying to maintain what we have right now. So now we can be functional. We can do what the city's supposed to do and go forward, and instead of just maintaining, we can start improving. So that's just kind of my thought. So I see what you're saying, but yeah, and that's the beauty of it. You do get to see it, because, I mean, in the CIP you see, potential projects, and we got Ryan now, who's doing a phenomenal job, and if you give him a couple people and alleviate him having to get out on lakes, spraying 21 lakes. We have 21 lakes. It's not like that's a quarter of our city. So that's a big job to ask for, 2-3 people to do. And then also, think about it, street sweeper. We have 1 street sweeper, and if he gets sick or something happens to him, we have no street sweeper. So it's good. We need that staff to come in. We need somebody to be able to fill in those positions. So,
my thoughts. Yeah, I think my reluctance on just raising things. One, I think if we're going to ask for more money from residents, I think we should identify the projects. I have some hesitancy, like we have on a larger budget, to just have it for kind of unspecified. I think and that's why I think we should, on this one, I think it's a little more clear. We've got sort of operating expectations, but some of the bigger increases are due to salary increases. I think we're at 262 in 2021, and 2025 has it up to 441. So that's quite up.
yeah, and we're still behind what other cities are paying.
Yeah, I have no idea on that one. that assumes or does not assume, but, so, I mean, I think we're all recognizing the deficiencies. I would like to see us be able to articulate to people that your stormwater fee is going up and it's because of this. So I think it's identifiable projects, and people, I think, in Maitland believe in the city and believe in supporting infrastructure improvements. So I think if we have identifiable projects, it's easier to garner support than just saying to raise your fee for 20 cents for $1, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I mean, I try to attend as many Lakes Advisory Board meetings as I can. They really do. They have some great projects that they're doing. I was here the other night, and Ryan's even, has a new project with some product that will capture phosphorus from even getting into the lake, and then using that, which is a clay, to capture it, and then we can take those bags and use it for our trees and our grasses to fertilize with. So, I mean, we have a lot of projects that we can show, and I think, Kim has a great list of projects. It's just, what the projects are, but I mean, that's not hard to put a list together and show where that money's going to. So, I think, in talking about it, I kind of want to segue into this, is that I know, compared to the private sector, we don't pay as much, but one of the things I've talked about in the past with Ken and with Sharon, not really with Mark, is, maybe we incentivize some of these jobs. Maybe instead of doing 5-day work weeks, we do 4 or 10, or, something that makes these jobs more attractive to people. That they would say, you know what, that's something I'd rather do. I'd rather leave the private sector and have a real life and work 4 days, and maybe take a little bit of a hit, and then have 3 days with my family. So, just something I want to throw out there.
Okay. Well, my view is that I think we have, kind of hit a constant rate of 980 here, and it's the budget that we have. This will take care of those projects, and the good thing about this budget, which I think the real reason I think we're not getting things done or we're not moving things ahead, it wasn't so much we didn't have enough people to do the projects. I think it was because the projects weren't feasible. I think we had a couple of those baffle box projects that were lined up, one for Lake Nina, and there was another one over in Lake Jim, and they're still there. I mean, as projects on paper, but they don't fit, so they can't actually put in the ground. So I think those were projects that were kind of committed to before we're figuring out if they're physically feasible or would actually produce the results we wanted. So I think we backed out of this capital project, which kind of led to some of this carry forward that we're still doing. But as you pointed out, Vance, I mean, this budget, we have 2 new people coming on, which is something that I think really has been a problem, because I think when somebody's not around, the one guy who's running the street sweeper, it just doesn't get run that way.
Yeah.
Or people just doing too much and you stretch too thin. You bring on 2 new hands over at for stormwater in lakes. I mean, I think that makes a huge difference in what things can get done. It kind of relieves everybody else to think big thoughts like the capturing the phosphate and feeding into our trees. So I think those projects are all good and they're within this budget. So I don't see much of a need to increase at this point, unless and we're to kind of justify that $90,000 to increase it over time. But that's not going to make a dent in this budget in any case. So those are my thoughts. Are, we're headed in the right direction. We're putting more people on the ground to do some of these projects that take more manpower than just a big capital project. And we've got a new Vector truck, which is going to be a big deal, and kind of being able to fix our own problems with our own pipes. So I don't know. I'm looking at 980 as a pretty good place to stay.
But how about when we have to hit the administrative expense fee, the difference in that?
Well, I mean, we could bring it up every year, or what is it, 253,000?
Yeah, and if we get it up to just 1039, that's only an extra, what did I say, 68,000 that puts to it.
Is the 980, is the 980 covering the added administrative fee?
No.
No way, not even close. He was saying 1099 to get it there.
1099 to cover the budget through 26
Oh.
at 90. 1214 to cover the
Oh, really?
budget and all administrative fees.
So the administrative fee, it was, if we impose a higher cap or take off the cap, then we're already running up against our current budget, and what we thought we was going to pay 3 years out actually gets us right away.
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of pushing this down the road further if we know that we're going to have to spend money at some point. We either spend it slowly and the increase is gradual and we prepare our residents for it, or we are going to be slamming into the brick wall, and they're really not going to be happy with us because they're going to say, why didn't you plan for this sooner? So I don't know that we have a good solution. I think we have two bad options, and the better option is to raise it slowly and get our residents prepared for it. We also make sure that we do what Mike is suggesting. We get out there in front of it and we give them some good communication about what it is that their money is paying for and where is the value and what it is that we're doing. But I don't want to go slamming into a brick wall in 3 years going, oh my goodness, we could have done something to mitigate this.
Well, and you make a good point. I mean, in 2017, we did a stormwater study, and it suggested that, you know, we do a slow rate of, I forgot what the percentage is, and we didn't do that. We went backwards, and we never went forward. So we put ourselves into this predicament right at the time.
To be honest, Nate, I think we stopped taking people's money and sticking it in the bank. That's kind of really what we did. Because if we had kept those raises, I mean, we'd have like 30 million in the bank. But getting back, so if we increase this and threw another $250,000 to the city administrative staff, and that comes down, that takes that much money out of the general budget, so we would take that into account on the ad valorem, I would assume, since we've suddenly lowered one pot of money, 250, and raised another. I believe in assigning costs to where they should go. So I don't want to hide the cost of the stormwater program by having Mark and Sharon clandestinely working on it. So.
Those administrative costs, are those assigned costs, like over the overall percentage, or are those like actual?
No, they're percentages.
Yeah, I mean, so they're staff that otherwise aren't employed. I mean, so it's, I get it, but I'm also, it's not something that I think is that terrible to have those costs be a little bit absorbed, or it's not 100% paid for. If what we're trying to say is,
or phase in the full market.
but let's and this is sort of larger than the discussion, but let's say at the time, to show deference to whoever made this decision, that the $90,000 had some basis in kind of saying, hey, it seems like a number that but it was $90,000 back whenever it was, and so the cost of doing business is going up. We've just talked about how salaries have to go up, so that number may go up. So even if we were to say some of that's proportion, if we're going back on the logic that if we assume the sound, however many years ago for the $90,000 number, that $90,000 should grow somewhat. So that would justify some increase in the fee in and of itself. So I think we could look at this several different ways, but it does seem appropriate that there is some increase, to the fee. I'm not probably as far in as Vance. I don't know what number Vance has in mind, but so.
Well, historically, in this area, and I think City of Maitland, I know it's the case in Orange County for years and years, there was everybody had a stormwater utility on paper, but nobody was really collecting any stormwater fees, and so it was just a political no-go, and they nobody really wanted to do it. And I think the City of Maitland was like that for a long time, where all the cost of the stormwater utility fund came out of the general fund. It was just correct.
Yeah.
So at some point, the Maitland City Council got itself together and said, let's just go do that, and took on to actually start, having a realistic fee. And so now we have, and that's probably where that $90,000 cap comes from. At some level, it was probably nobody was really wanted to just fully charge stormwater utility fund for every one of its costs, because traditionally have been kind of subsidized by the general fund in any case. And so this discussion really is, just closing that extra delta, there. So, Mark, what is if we were to, it's kind of like we do with Sharon, that she has a calculator on the big screen, but what is
Sorry.
what do we, you have to say more with your pencil and your calculator. So, what would the stormwater rate be if the fee be if it were taking that 253 and laying it on top?
If we just laid it on top to eliminate the deficit through 2026, 2027, that fee would be $12.14.
Yeah, I'm not excited about that.
I wouldn't be either if I was running for reelection.
And if it
I'm
were
not, I mean, just from a.
I know.
So if you were going to do, you could raise it from $90,000,
I think
some incremental move that way.
what Lindsay said about,
Yeah.
so if we do like 80 cents, 90 cents, whatever that is to get to that number to phase in that hit.
Yeah.
I think part of what you're saying too, John, is that, I mean, this does pay for it, but it doesn't pay for it in the out years. But for us parking this in an account that's going to earn us no money, that's not necessarily fiscally responsible either. So I think there's some hybrid of this that we can hopefully come up with.
What's that hybrid, Mark?
Policy decision.
No, it's not, it's a staff decision.
I wish it were.
I think, Mark, and we were talking about this, the hard thing on this, Mark, is, and you and I talked about this right before me, I hate doing this in the sense that we're just throwing darts, right?
Yeah.
So and I think that's what maybe Mike Thompson is saying is help us with a number, because if not, we're just sort of arbitrarily deciding a number.
What is your goal? Your goal is to fully fund this as if it were a utility fund,
Well,
an enterprise fund?
yeah,
So you're
but-
covering the capital, operating costs, and administrative costs in the 5-year plan? Is that
My
the
answer
goal?
would be yes.
But again, if we look at this big picture, right? How we got to a starting balance of a bigger number, right? Is it possible that after we kind of have this run of expenses through 26, that in 27, 28, 29, there won't be as many projects and the fees will put money back into the balance, or is that a fantasy and that's not going to happen?
Well, there's always an ebb and flow with projects, and you are going to hit a limit where in a built-out city, there's no more projects, capital projects for you to do. You're going to reach a level of diminishing returns where you're spending exorbitant amounts of money for very small incremental improvements in the water quality, and that might not be too far out. Then the shift becomes maintenance. You're out there maintaining your current systems that haven't been maintained in years. We have a lot of developments in the city that were built with open swales. The swales have been filled in, so they're not functioning anymore. They used to be treatment facilities. So you're going back and then fixing pipes that have been in the ground for 60, 70 years, lining the pipes to make sure they're still carrying and not adding sediment to the lake. So there's always something you can do, so you don't want to look at this as just a capital project.
Understood, but I think what my point is though, you don't want to have a system where you constantly are just moving this number up and down from, let's say even we have a range between 725 that it was up to 1214. I mean, you would like to say that in years where there's a capital, it's running a deficit, that you would help it out with general fund to then have it replenish itself over years where there aren't so many projects. So the fact that this is going to go to a lower number, that the balance of the fund is going to get lower in certain years, doesn't necessarily should make us jump and say we got to raise the fee so much if in years out fees will then replenish the fund. So I think there's ways to look at this. I mean, not every year are you going to buy a $400,000 back truck. Not every year are you going to do certain things. So I don't know. I haven't. You have to tell me, but from my standpoint, I don't think you need to rush to this bigger number, because I'd hate to have us be sitting here at future councils, because presumably not many of us would be on this council if I turned out in 20, whatever, 7, 8, 9, 10. But you'd hate to have this roller coaster of up and down. I'd rather realistically set this number at a number that you can keep it consistent, so it would keep the fund.
But is that realistic? I mean, in a city that's continuing to grow and is continuing to make improvements, aren't we always going to be looking at raising that number over time incrementally anyways? If we are not raising the number, then it demonstrates that either a lack of growth or some sort of stagnation in our maintenance and our projects. So, and also this number, as Mark and I discussed, this number doesn't account for some sort of emergency that happens and we have no money left over to pay for that. And now we're dipping into other things in order to overcome that. You know, do we always want to be moving money from one pocket to the other just because we don't want to upset the voters?
So Lindsay, I want to hit on two things you just thought about. One is, you never know what opportunities could arise, not even emergency. Maybe there's some development and we have the opportunity to put in pipes or capture stormwater or something to help improve, and so we'd have that money. The other thing you were talking about is we're a growing city. I mean, in the last, 5 years, we've jumped, 5,000 people, and we're growing and growing and growing. Well, you know what? We have impact fees for that with police and fire, and so, but when it comes to stormwater, we say, oh, it doesn't need to change. But, we just brought on two new policemen, 4 new fire people, sorry. And I really think, looking at from 2017, the study that we did, and I'm going to ask Kim if she knows, I don't know if she does, but we're pretty cheap when it comes to our stormwater fees. I think there's a lot of cities out there that pay a lot higher than us for stormwater. Do you know, would that be a true statement, Kim?
I wouldn't put her.
Oh, okay, I don't want to put her into that.
She hasn't done the analysis.
No, but I mean, as I saw, what I saw from the study was, we're a lot cheaper than, a lot of other cities.
Well, and again, I get back to your definition of cheap. I mean, if we're doing all the projects we can do, we're raising what we should raise, and we've been doing all the projects we could do,
Oh, listen, yeah, and I'm not even talking project, I'm talking administrative fees, I'm talking equipment, I'm talking product that we get for the lake, sprays.
They do that, and our staff does that. I want a fee that takes into account, the true cost. I mean, the way pollution works is taking out the first 100 pounds is relatively cheap. That costs you $20, and then the next 100 pounds costs you $100, and then so as you go down, you're paying a whole lot of money to get a smaller and smaller bang. But I think Mark mentioned that. But you know, as far as this 253,000, you know, I don't know if we can phase that in over 5 years if we decide that we want we don't want to just overnight slam the stormwater fund with that and say, you know, that'll be a 5 or 6 year phase in, and over that phase in period, they'll be totally self-sustaining and avoid that huge hit, but get us there eventually, you know, on the slower glide path, so we're not suddenly, you know, jacking up the fee, you know, from 9 something to 12 something.
And I think we all agree on that we don't want to, like Lindsay said, throw it against the wall.
Then if we decide to do that, then what does that do to our, you know, next 4 or 5 year increases? But I just don't want to equate how much we raise this fee with how much we care about our lakes, because it's not a direct correlation there. Because, I mean, we can spend what we can spend and have the capacity to spend, and any more than that is just taking money and sticking it in Wells Fargo. And that's what we've been doing, and that's, you know, because we're starting to have really big surpluses, and then, you know, that's when we went back and readjusted the rate, because collecting more money just meant more money in the bank. It didn't mean more money for projects. So,
I'm happy to sit down and talk to you about a whole bunch of projects I got in mind.
well, you know, I think that's the staff and all that we got.
The sunshine violations that would occur.
But no, next year,
We can just ignore that.
You know, so, you know, I don't know if y'all want to balance this out, have it be a self-sustaining fund. You know, suddenly hit a $250,000 hit, this might be a bit excessive. So, you know, well, how much do we want to phase that in, and then phase in the whatever increase we're looking at, instead of, you know, big hit.
Yeah, and I'm with you. It's like, well, what's the number? You know, we don't have the magic calculator up there where we can throw it in and see how it changes it. You know, is it, I don't know, you throw out 60 cents more a year and see where that gets us in 5 years. But you know what? At the end of the day, in 5 years, this whole council could look different. So we can say whatever we want for 5 years. It doesn't really matter. We can only go year to year.
I said this last year, I wish that when they had done this, in hindsight, it's 2020, right? But I'm trying to avoid the future brain damage, so that we don't have, it'd be better if we had a system where this was more consistent, so that this thing wasn't such a back and forth. I mean, I think that I would try to look at this as saying, you're gonna increase it, and then there'd be some mechanism by which we would sort of keep that as a consistent measure. I really don't, I think to Mike's point, there was probably a budget surplus, and then they said, hey, we don't need to do this, and so then they dropped it.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
That to me is not,
Yeah.
I just think we should look at this more as a steady pace, so that future council at 8, whatever, isn't having to, you know, throw a number at this. So I think we should look at this more holistically, just down the line. That's just my
You know what, and I'd be happy to sit down with you and talk about that.
No, you wouldn't.
All you need is a notice and somebody take notice.
So basically, it sounds like you're stabilizing the stormwater fee and then doing this and that with the general fund. So we're just kind of.
Was the approach then to raise the administrative cost cap from 90 to 100 or something? And move that up,
Eliminate it.
you know, annually, or?
With Mark's eliminated.
That's not Mark's recommendation.
Oh.
That was a request from city council to see what it looked like.
Oh, okay. I thought that was Mark's
That's-
recommendation. I'm kind of like that. I mean, if it has to be done, why do we have a cap on it? If it is what it is, and that's what we use, why are we trying to cap it and hold it back?
Well, I think if we decide to do that, it would be better to phase that in rather than a huge one-time hit.
Same thing as
I
in.
agree.
Yeah,
I'm into that.
I agree with that.
all you'd be doing is reducing what you can allocate for projects next year. So
But then we'd have to have like a video of ourselves next year telling our past, future selves to remember that we did this, so that we're not having the same conversation again.
Yeah, we won't have Maria here to remind us.
Right. Let's have Mark though.
We can
Bring her back.
run the
Mark's not
numbers.
going
If you would like to increase the administrative costs over 5 years to cover the full administrative cost, I mean, the numbers are laid out there. We can get there. Those are just numbers in a spreadsheet. But you need to decide what to do on the other side of it with the fee, whether you're going to match that or of course, we can always make adjustments on the other side, on the cost side. You know, we're talking revenue sides here. There's still another side of the formula that are costs, what we put out there. So it just means doing a bit less. You know, we don't do a big capital project. We have to have the budget balanced. So we have to look at that, and no matter what you do, we'll make it balanced. We'll make it work with the resources we have. But if it's your goal to cover those full administrative costs, we could phase that in over the next 5-year period and give you the numbers there. Tie that back into the capital budget, the proposed capital budget to look at what the fee increases would be as we go along with that. So we can take a stab at that. We didn't know whether that was going to be the policy direction, though.
Yeah.
You could just take a direction to stay the course and supplement.
So if we brought it up to if we brought it up to 1039 from 980, what it's at now, that would give us that 68,400. That would put us at 163,000 with that for the administrative expense fee, and we could put a cap on that. Does that sound doable? Or did that not even make sense to you? So if we brought it up to
So you're saying raise
the ERU to 1039.
and use that difference to augment the administrative fee.
Right.
And keep the capital budget the same.
Right.
Keep the rest of the budget the same. We would still be looking at a deficit in 2026.
Yeah, I personally think we're getting super sidetracked with this administrative fee, in my opinion. I would, I think we should just look at trying to get this thing consistent. Because either way, the number that it takes to get to fully self-sustaining plus getting rid of the cap on the 90,000 is what, Mark? What's the number?
1214, the ERU number, 1214.
But I think we need to get there, Mike, and, sneaking up on it is a good way of doing it. Not 20 cents at a time, but maybe 60, 80 cents at a time, dollar at a time.
So I think to John's point, in some municipalities, this entire budget comes out of the general budget. So to have a portion of the budget come out of the general budget is not necessarily
So in this administrative fee, that's Ryan's comes out of there, right?
No, Ryan is
So no, this is just everybody who supports it.
Supports Ryan and everyone else.
So is that kind of what you're thinking? Maybe just take.
it's a general, in my opinion, it's a general overhead number, and it's not uncommon. I think in my opinion, we're just focused on that, but it's not that, it's not like we're stealing money from somewhere. I think that's not an uncommon practice, and as we've said, some of this is wrapped up into a general budget altogether. So this is, in some ways, you could say all overhead should be paid for by.
So is my point?
And you take the 90,000 off the pick. You could view it both ways.
Actually, you could.
So I think you could say, no, the general fund's gonna pay all the 90,000, and therefore we could leave the ERU the same and pay for more stormwater projects. So I think, like I said, I think we're focused on something.
But that would increase the millage rate.
That would impact the general fund.
Yeah, the general fund, so.
Right, by 90,000, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So it's just, we're kind of.
Where do you want to take it from?
We're focused on, I think,
Let's we have to, there is a public comment period, I think, for this. So Let's go ahead and open that up.
I don't know if there's anybody here who wants to talk about it.
We might have some opinions from the public. We don't have public comment here. We'll consider
Are you over? No.
I'm allowed to talk?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Colleen Lilly from 250 Seneca Trail. I think you can just do the 20 cents and be done with it. Just, I like what's there. Just, let's, I mean, I do agree with you about Lindsay Hall Harrison about, you know, if we don't do enough, it looks like we're not doing enough. But I also agree with Vance. You know, your lakes, we need more stormwater funds for that, but I really don't think we should raise it right now this year. And making it consistent, I think that's a great idea because we're going to talk about this next year. So why don't we consistently find a percentage that works? And if we need to change it, then you have a meeting for that. The city council meeting for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Colleen.
I bet you think you see Dale McDonald from 108 Angela Court, but you really see Mark Walsh from Lake Sibylla, who's been advocating for many, many years that fully funded rate, including administrative costs, which is how I can still remember 12-14. Maria, this was and you will remember this probably better than me. Because we had no dedicated funding source for lakes maintenance except through the benevolence of any given council from the general fund forever. Seems like Mayor Kenston and his crew put this user fee in place. Many of us disagreed at the time because user fees weren't tax deductible. Property tax, the lower taxes were. So this was, but that is and has been the only dedicated funding source we've had for all these years. We all, and you know, I've been a part of all these discussions for so long. I would agree with Mr. Thomas that we would like to see the cost of the implementation of the program allocated over the program. And at the same time, you got the political fallout from going from a 980 number to a 1214 number. So you can make nobody happy at either number. Everybody's not going to be happy with them. So sooner or later, we're going to need to be able to take some incremental steps, because by 2026, that administrative number is going to be bigger still. And so if we just assign incremental increases, we're taking wild guesses then as well. So it's not an easy call. There is no perfect answer, like I wish there was. You know, but we can't. And it was very insightful to be able to sit in LAB last week and hear the discussion and understand how important lakes are to the attraction and the fabric of this city. When you live on one or not, they float all boats in this city in so many ways. Just like our schools and our parks, they're all part of the fabric here. So committing to maintaining a level of excellence and level of service that we've come to know is going to cost. Nobody's going to be happy, but we're going to have to spend the money. Thanks again. Thank Mark Walsh.
Thank you, Dale. Okay, let's bring it back up to the council for some resolution to the resolution. Is there any further discussion on this? Does anyone have a motion they'd like to make?
I just kind of,
Get there?
I'm kind of interested in what Councilman Wild said about, you know, maybe we should just look at this at the general fund. I mean, would it be easier to absorb in the general fund or keep it stormwater? Where it's
Yeah, I think-
where you're gonna do a big jump if we kind of try to fund this by itself.
And I have no history, but I clearly think that what this was trying to do when it was at the inception was hybridize this, right? Have some of the costs be picked up by the general fund and have this out there for projects. And for a while, there weren't enough projects, and so the fund created a balance. Then we've had a run now of projects, and so the fund is gonna run eventually into a negative. So that it's a constant, to me, that's the ebb and flow. So what I'm trying to get rid of or look at is if we can reduce the ebb and flow in the actual fee, just to keep the fee more consistent. And if that means 1 year you dip into a negative that then has to get repaid over a certain amount of time, or you have to, I mean, to me, that's how projects and capital improvement go. So I'm just not as focused on that administrative fee as others. I'm not saying that's wrong, right, I'm just not as focused on it.
It almost sounds like it'd be better just get rid of the stormwater fee altogether and do it all at no levy like we used to, and that way it would be this.
Mark, if we tweak the administrative fee, can we do that separately at another time? And how will that affect the budget for this coming year? I mean, let's say we took it up at the next meeting if we really.
The fee has to be, the fee has to be separate.
Okay, but we can't tweak how we're allocating it for future, we could tweak it for how we're allocating for future years, just
Yeah,
not for this year.
absolutely.
Okay. So if we wanted to change our policy on what we're doing.
Okay, I'll make the motion. Make a motion that
Answer the number.
we set stormwater fee of $10.45, that's 65 more cents than last year, and set an administration expense cap at $163,000.
So you've done.
So pretty much that difference will cover raise that administration fee.
Before I discuss it, just wait for somebody to second.
I'll second for the purpose of discussion.
Okay.
I don't get that one at all. I mean, all you're doing there is then you're gonna have Mark go back and then just plug that number back into the general fund. Because all you've done is you've done nothing to help out the future balance of the project. All you've done is raise that administrative fee to then take away the number that's gonna go from the general fund. Am I right or wrong on that, Mark?
Right.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, that's what it, I mean, if your thought is to just take that whole hit of, you know, what is it, 215,000, then, you know, if you want to make that motion.
No. I'm saying I don't see why that does any, I don't see how that, if what the focus
Because
is.
it gets us closer than where we were.
Yeah, but all that does is just change an administrative fee component, not do anything to address any kind of capital improvement. I think.
Well, it keeps us where we were, as John said, you know, you didn't see, he was saying, you know, we don't have any big CIPs, and maybe that's something we could look at, is cutting back on some of these, you know, projects that bring that down.
I'd be more interested in going the other way. I mean, I'm not interested actually in even dealing with this administrative fee tonight. I think, again, we're throwing numbers out there. In future years, I'd be more open, or not open, but I think it'd be an interesting discussion to say, what's the net effect of taking the $90,000 cap away and not having any administrative allocation of the fund versus making it fully self-sufficient? I think that's a good discussion to have, but I don't think we've got the information to make that decision right now on that administrative fee. So I think we should focus on what that ERU should be, and do we want to start stepping it up to address future shortfalls? That's what I think.
I agree.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Maria, would you like to call the roll?
Councilmember Wild,
No.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul Harrison,
No.
Councilman Thomas,
No.
Mayor Lance.
No.
So, So then the follow-up would be, we'll just keep the administration fee where it's at, and then determine what kind of increase, if any, we need on the capital side. And so that's where we logically are heading with that. Is that right?
Yes, in order to keep us solvent by 26, so we don't take that hit in 26 of $204,000.
So if we decide to leave the administration fee alone, what number steps us up through 2026 to keep all the projects on
$10.99
So we would have to do that now,
to cover the deficit.
even if it's 90,000, just as it is.
Yeah.
So there's no step up, that's just,
Well, you could step it up, but the incremental steps would be larger with every year you decrease. So if you take half of it this year, you'd be looking at half plus, because you have 1 year less to take it up.
Right.
Yeah, spread it out over 4 years, you're looking at more than a fourth every year, so.
But let's say you were gonna raise it every year, but in 2025 or 2024, you have better vision as to what's gonna happen in 7, 8, and 9. And if you didn't have big projects planned in 7, 8, and 9, you maybe wouldn't be so afraid of running, having a lower fund balance in 26, right? So I mean, I think that there's not, the race to get there all at once, I think, is potentially more harm than good, which is probably, when you look back at the history, when you went from 725 to 1039, and then you had to pull back, that probably wasn't a good thing. So I mean, I think the logic is to say, let's look at this a little bit more consistently. I mean, the year that went from 725 to 860 was a 20% increase. And then you had, little jumps, and then you had to go down, 8.3%. So I think looking at this as a more gradual step is, in my opinion. But again, that's just my.
And that works too. You can keep, like I said, you can keep it at 980 and it would work, and then we could work the numbers. And that's why, I think that's why it's set up, you do it this way. It forces you to look at it every year, to take that 5th year into consideration to do that check on the fee.
I do agree in raising the fee to address cost of inflation, because this is not a number that's based on, the millage rate assumes that you'll get more money, even when property values go up and there's other growth. This is a fixed number. So I understand the need to raise it to just cover costs of inflation, cost of increase in salaries, and cost of the fact that a truck costs more or whatever. So I get that, but I don't see the need to raise it all the way up. And again, just my opinion. I just don't know what that number is, because I feel like we're arbitrarily.
So for arbitrarily assigning a number, which I agree, do we want to assign a number based on a percentage change that we think is tolerable, or do we want to pick a number that we think sounds nice? Like, do we want to pick like 1025, or do we want to pick 1014 because that's exactly 9% increase? Kind of do
I would suggest we do the 2017, just even going back 5 years, it was 1039.
So just
And I
say
think
we-
back then in 2017, if I remember correct, I think we had $3 million in reserves in the stormwater fund. Now we're down to half of that, so.
So if we pick 1035, we look generous? At least it wasn't as high as it was in 2017.
Yeah, 1035 still gets by about 65,000.
I mean, a roughly 3% increase, right? If you figure a CPI adjustment, let's just say you throw an average of a 3% CPI, it's got to get you to 1010 by my math, approximately. And if you kept going at a CPI increase of 10%, about 3%. I don't know what that gets. I mean, and somebody check my math. That's what I'm just getting.
What was the 3% this year?
What's that?
Where you say 1010 is 3% this year?
I think so. If I'm at 980 and I multiply that by 1.03, I'm 10.094.
Yeah.
So I'm roughly 1010. And if I'm at 1010 and I go 1.03 and the next year I'm at 1040. So, I mean, I think a 3% increase year over year doesn't get us that far off. That's just my,
What'd you say, 3%?
3%. Gets you to 1010.
That, I'm just looking at the rate of inflation and payroll right now, and I question if that's even enough.
Chairman Powell says that inflation's a temporary measure here.
I believe that.
Yeah, I'm not making a plug, just,
I'm confused. I thought we needed 1099 to get us 5 years, so we're breaking even, and now we can step it up with a far less number. I'm confused about
Well, I think what it was saying is we can step it up with a far smaller number, and it just means that they're going to have to fix the budget in order to accommodate these smaller numbers.
Theoretically, that would be fewer projects or...
Fewer projects, fewer maintenance.
Okay. I mean, as long as that's what we're doing.
Right, as long as we go in with our eyes open that, yes, it means, little Timmy's going to
Okay,
get
well, I
water.
thought the goal was to keep the capital list intact, so the goal is more to...
What CIP items are we looking to get rid of?
Nothing next year,
that's the whole point. I think
nothing over
we're-
the next 3 years.
Right, and so that we don't have a crystal ball to the 5th year. I mean, that's the...
Okay, well, I think the numbers Mike laid out are good. I'll go with that if you want to make a motion.
So just to give I did some rough math here. So if we do this, in 2022, we're at 1010. In 2023, we're at 1040. And this is just on 0.3%. Hold on, I want to square this up. Hold on. Before I proclaim my math efficiency. It's 1070 in 2024. And then at 25, you're at 1103. And then you're at 1136. So even if you just rounded those up to whole numbers, I mean, if you have 3.5% in future years, you're at 1136, which I think is pretty close to where it needs to be if I'm not. We're just taking it in a more gradual step in what is probably a easily explainable.
I heard some agreement on that.
If you make a motion on that, Mike, I will second.
Can we make that, is there any way we can bring that back up next year? We can.
Yeah, we're required to bring it up every year.
No, I mean, that,
You can't find
that there's a reminder to us that we had these numbers and that were the numbers that we were looking at.
Yeah, it does make sense. I think.
You were checking it out, Nora?
Yeah, pretty tight.
What's that?
You dangerous thing with the lawyer with the calculator. I just want to make sure. Mark-
Yeah, right.
The iPhone calculator works okay.
My iPhone's saying the same thing yours is.
You gonna make a motion?
If anyone else wants, I'll make it. If no one else.
Go for it.
All right, so I'll make a motion to set the ERU, get to where we want to say this.
$10.10.
All right, move to adopt a resolution establishing a rate of $10.10 per equivalent residential unit per month for environmental stormwater utilities and provide an effective date of October 1, 2021.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are we able to call the roll?
Councilmember Guthrie, Councilmember Hall Harrison,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas,
Aye.
Councilmember Wild,
Aye.
Mayor Lyons.
Aye.
I vote no on
Okay.
that. Thank you.
All right. Well, good work. I think that common wisdom has brought us in on a landing on that, which is Good one. Okay, so what do we have up here? There are no discussion items. And that brings us back to reports. Does anybody have any reports from the city attorney? Mr. Hand, thank you for sitting in for Cliff tonight.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here. No, I do not have a report this evening.
Okay. Mark, anything?
Just a couple items. If you happen to be traveling on Shell Point West Wednesday, don't plan on getting too far. We have a emergency sewer repair that's going to be going on there, so the road's going to be closed for the entire day. So our crews can get in there and fix that, weather permitting. So we're notifying the property owners down there so they know that there's going to be an inconvenience for the day. If you haven't noticed, out on Sandspur, new traffic signals been mounted on the mast arms that began operation on Friday, corner of Maitland Avenue and Sandspur. Final work will be rebuilding sidewalks around there, so we're looking to get on that and wrap that project up too. So that's moving forward. Lake Sevilia watershed cleanup is scheduled for October 9th. Staging will be at Sevilia Beach. So if you watch your emails and certainly our social media feed, you'll see more information on that. Maitland Movie in the Park, first up for the year, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Saturday, October 9th, 7:30, right here at Independence Square. So we're also looking at our Halloween event, scheduled for October 30th at Independence Square again and Independence Lane. So our fall festival Halloween combination event. So
Out here.
yep.
All right. I'll throw in real quick. You know, we're talking to the waitress over here across the street, and they're starting to suckle in a little bit. And the more traffic we can generate, more events, farmers market, everything we can throw over here to drive people over there.
Yeah. And on that note, our first Get Down downtown will be October 1st. That's when we're scheduling it. So.
All right. Well, that sounds great. Council reports? Mike, that was yours?
That was mine.
All right. You have anything
Talking to the
else?
waitress.
All right. Vance, anything? No. Mike? No. Lisbon?
Get vaccinated.
Vaccinated early.
I gotta go get my third dose.
All right. Okay, well, that's it for the evening. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there with us. We're adjourned.